End of the show, we've got the launch of Studio Botics free website giveaway competition that is powered by Salam Media, and we'll be joined by Mohammed Hurzuk, the director of Studio Botics. But right now, we're going across to be joined by Chief Economist at Efficient Group Ltd. We're joined by Dawie Roodt. Dawie, good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Good morning to you. Thank you.
Well, Dawie, we've seen President Cyril Ramaphosa experiencing his elation at the SA Investment Conference, talking about 109 billion rand in commitments and saying that the country would be put back on track to secure what is called the ambitious 1.5 trillion target over the next 5 years.
Yeah, well, actually the target was for $100 billion. So the target changes every day because the exchange rate of the rand changes every day. But yes, we are targeting initially $100 billion of additional investment in South Africa. I think it's possible that we could achieve that. The problem is measuring all of this because the idea certainly is to get new investments that wasn't going to be made in the country. And I think what happens in practice is quite often is that companies simply put investments on the table, say we are going to invest A, B, and C, and that's something they would have done in any event. But still, I think it's a good exercise by the president. It's something that we, certainly should be doing. But I'm afraid I'm not too optimistic that it really is going to work. And the reason why I say so is because of so many contradictions that we have in South Africa in terms of economic policies, and so many contradictions in terms of the various economic plans that we have on the table. And I think the president's own economic plan that was released about 6 weeks or so ago is an example of all these different contradictions that we currently have. But nevertheless, that's certainly better than doing nothing. But I think we need to make some serious adjustments to economic policies, but also in terms of the efficiency of the state before we can really talk about substantial investments in the country.
Well, certainly. And look, at this point in time, we're looking at it, Dawie, as these are pledges that have been made. And the critical question here is, will they materialize, especially against the background of some of the issues that you've spoken about in terms of some of the controversial policies, and also, more importantly, the confidence to invest in South Africa?
Yeah. If you look at some of these investments also, some of these investments are being made or at least pledged. And that is, many of these investments, like for example in the motor industry, are investments that is being done in South Africa because they get special treatment. And the motor industry is a good example of that, where they're actually getting special treatment. There's an indirect subsidy to the motor industry in South Africa. So they are being, they're being treated better than many other industries in the country. I guess I'm not very much in favor of any kind of subsidy. What we're also seeing is a lot of investments in, for example, in things, or promises at least, in the mining industry. And the reason why we're seeing the sudden surge in investments in the mining industry is because the last couple of months, in fact, we've seen an improvement in a way that, or the speed at which certain projects are approved. So it's without a doubt, a major obstacle to investments in South Africa is simply the state dragging its feet to provide licenses. As an example, the mining industry is a good example of that. Telecommunications is another very good example of that. So we haven't had much investments in telecommunications. Suddenly, there are pledges of investments in telecoms, but the main reason is that simply because that they're making certain spectrum available that they should have done years ago. So I'm afraid, the reality is quite often we do not get investments in the country simply because the state is dragging its feet in providing licenses and doing their part to get people to invest in the country.
Now, Dawie, also, I think what is important to understand is, we've been now close on to, it's going to be a year into this pandemic, and we know the damage that has been done to not only the South African economy, but economies right across the entire world. And from an investment perspective, in terms of the impact of this pandemic, and going forward, we don't even know how much longer we're still going to be before we get out of this pandemic. Is this likely to impact on investments?
Yeah, without a doubt, already. In fact, we can see that already. Something like 10% of the pledges are being postponed because of the lockdown, and maybe that's an important point. It is not the pandemic that's causing the damage. It is the lockdown. And in the case of South Africa, South Africa's lockdown was quite severe. It was quite a strict lockdown compared to many other countries in the world. But without a doubt, that is already impacting on that. And according to the president's office, we've seen about 10% of the previous pledges in terms of investments that have been postponed because of the lockdown. And the South African economy, in the end, that is what really matters: economic growth. And I'm afraid the South African economy, as we all know, is in a very, very deep depression. Even the Reserve Bank yesterday, their expectations are for the economy to contract by about 8% or so this year. And it's going to take us many, many years really to get out of this. But that is the key really, not an investment conference, but the key to investments is actually strong economic growth, something that we certainly do not have at the moment.
Dawie, just looking at where these investments are needed most at this point in time, and when one looks at the critical sectors that drive the economy of the country, or where we could possibly mitigate some of the damage that has already been done, and to an extent improve the situation, particularly as far as growth is concerned. What are some of the critical areas that come to your mind?
Yeah, what I would, if I can sort of write an economic policy and decide on a specific sector or sectors where I would like to see investments, without a doubt, it will be in the secondary sectors. That is manufacturing specifically, because manufacturing is the place where we can actually employ a lot of people. But in order for us to really be successful in manufacturing, we have to create companies that are internationally competitive. Now, and that is part of the problem that I had with the president's plan, for example, because the president wants to support manufacturing in South Africa, but his emphasis is on import substitution. And that's incorrect. That's not the right way to go about this. If we really want to have successful businesses, we have to be successful internationally. And that's one of those contradictions. But manufacturing certainly is a place where I will put a lot of emphasis. Unfortunately, there are many obstacles in manufacturing. The lack of electricity is a very good example of that. And in fact, if you look at the numbers, the last couple of years, we actually deindustrialized in South Africa. We've lost a lot of manufacturing capacity. So perhaps a good place to start is not to support manufacturing, but simply try to prevent the guys that are still operating from closing their doors as well.
Yes, and also together with manufacturing, we require the necessary skills. So basically, we also need to grow the skills base so that we've got people that are suitably qualified and skilled to obviously to make sure that when we have these manufacturing facilities, we've got people who can actually run them and run them successfully.
Yeah, without a doubt. And if you talk about manufacturing, there's another international trend, and that is that many companies in the past, for example, American companies, they will move their manufacturing facilities to China or to Vietnam or places like that. Now, the opposite is actually happening now, is that they're moving their manufacturing back to their home bases. So it's going to be very difficult for South Africa to really to compete in that specific space. But there are some other industries as well. I think tourism is an excellent one. Tourism took a huge knock this year, and hopefully the economy will open up soon and the tourists will return. But that's another potential money spinner for South Africa, tourism, and that's a relatively easy one to get involved in as well.
Well, David, as always, thank you very much. In fact, Dawie, sorry, I spoke to David. I spoke to David earlier on. But Dawie, thank you very much for that and for your time with us this morning. As always, we wish you all the best.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Dawie Roodt, Chief Economist at Efficient Group Ltd. And we're heading for another break. We come back, and this is exciting. This is a launch of Studio Botics free website giveaway competition powered by Salam Media.
Massive explosions have rocked Lebanon. Homes destroyed. Hundreds of people